one. Welcome in to another episode of Betting the Pitch Presents the NFL Edition podcast. I'm your host, the real underscore G Warner, joined by at A underscore Schnicker. We went 2-0 on our best bets last week. The Arizona Cardinals, check, plus 3, 4, whatever number it closed. And the Indianapolis Colts, despite a lot of rumors about them benching their quarterback this week. And he might have taken himself out due to exhaustion as well.
Yes.
However, still enough for the Colts to cover. At A underscore Schnicker, how are you doing on this Tuesday, October 29th?
I'm feeling good. At some points during that Colts game, I don't know if I felt like I was the right side, but we did, the number moved in our direction. We gave it out at 6, and then by Wednesday evening, it was already at 5, and I think it closed 5. Um, but yeah, Anthony Richardson, that's a journey. Riding that experience with him, holy moly, that is terrifying.
It's funny you say that because I think I've backed him. Well, actually, I think I was more backing Joe Flacco because I've been on the Colts. Let's see, I backed them against the Dolphins, against the Titans, against the Jaguars. So that's 3 straight weeks. And you're right. The Joe Flacco experience is a very different one than the Anthony Richardson experience, and we might be getting that this week and moving forward. We'll see because they're pretty committed to their contract. But we're gonna go through a 6 pack of games. We got standalones, and then we got a dealer's choice of sorts. At Andrew Schwarzenegger gets pick two. I get to pick one because I'm a gentleman, and we will decide and talk what we're gonna find on to add to our winning card. We're 10-6 so far this season. That's about 63% with rounding, because we like to be simple here. And our last 34, we've won 22. So 22-12 for 65%. Not so bad. So let's get going. I'll start on Thursday night with it's weird that the Jets keep showing up on Thursdays, or at least they keep playing on Thursdays. I'm not really sure that they're showing up. I got the Texans a 2-point underdog right now with a total of 42.
As this game kept moving more toward the Jets, I couldn't help but just think about. I feel like we've broken down every Jets game this year.
That's all they do is play primetime games, and we're stuck as one of the covenants of this podcast is go through standalone games because that's what the people want to hear.
Yeah. And we've talked about the under train is no more
It's
on
off the
Thursday night.
tracks.
It's
It's
it has
uh
derailed.
it's jumped off my balcony, but I have not.
Um, okay, well, so let's go through the Jets one more time. Let's figure out another exciting way we can make this Jets team seem exciting.
You know what?
Um,
Let's start with the Texans and see
okay,
how far we can
okay.
get there because I mean, the Jets moving to a 2-point favorite now is definitely interesting considering I've been tracking this number and ever since I've been tracking it as I pull this up in my little handy dandy spreadsheet. So initially I saw the Texans a 1.5-point underdog, moved all the way down to pick them. Now we're back to 2. So I feel like we're going to be oscillating between these numbers. They don't mean a lot till you get to 3. Though we've certainly on this podcast, if you're a long-term listener on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or on YouTube, you would have heard us talk about what is a key number anymore. Is it just 7? But at this point, we're seeing the Jets a 2-point favorite, but there's a lot of injuries on the Texans side. Looks like they're going to be down Stephon Diggs plus Nico Collins and Tank Dell maybe too, or is he just not good? I'm not sure, but
Yeah, I think people have been selling on Tank Dell. I think he's going to be the only one healthy for it.
not great.
Um,
So tell me,
no,
so the Texans were awesome last year, had kind of conspicuously small win total this season
yeah,
for the regular season wins, and they've been good, not great. They've kind of been surviving so far.
yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do what we've talked about a couple of weeks. I'm a big believer in Nico Collins. I think his connection with CJ Stroud is maybe more than just a handicap of one of the best receivers missing. I also think you brought it up last week. We were talking about Tampa and losing Godwin and Evans. Um, I think as irrelevant as running back injuries and running back losses are, I think wide receiver losses um, can exponentially affect your number just because it's a passing league. These are all points that you were bringing up last week, and the drop off from these elite wide receivers to the backups is is so steep that it can really derail an offense. On the other side of the ball, the Texans defense, they've had good pass rushers on the edge, but they've been gashed in the run game. Um, I was expecting Derek Stingley to be one of the best defensive backs in the league. It's not been that just yet. So I really think probably the expectations are skewing our thoughts on the Texans going into the year, but they're probably on course for where they were last year, and some of that improvement. It's just hasn't been as big, especially with all the offseason moves they made to kind of announce themselves as a contender for the Super Bowl.
So the Texans are 6-2. They have a 2-game lead in the AFC
Yeah.
South, which looks like a terrible division back to where we were years and years ago, or maybe not that far ago, long ago. If we're talking to the Texans, because they were known for not blitzing at all until one last play before the first half ended against New England Patriots, that resulted in another one of those calamitous under deaths when Drake May found that he had a deep ball in his arm, just one, but he had one. And the Jets, I mean, when you go to the other side, we've talked about them so much, we probably don't need to go through the acquisitions and all they've done and all the expectations, but they are a 2-6, 2-7 football team right now. Having just lost on the road at the New England Patriots. Yeah, 2-6 right now. Sorry, I almost gave them an extra loss. That's not fair because I need them to get to 8 losses so I can cash my under 9.5. I didn't think that it would be in the region, this quickly,
You're
but
getting
but
close.
we're getting closer, even on games I don't expect to be that competitive. Nice little fourth and goal win. How you doing? But the Jets, they've got some good fantasy pieces. Their schedule gets a lot easier soon, but I feel like they're trending toward destruction before they can even get to that easy schedule. Because this is not an easy one. At home, short week, coming off a loss, they probably respond. Texans are pretty limited, but we haven't seen the Jets do anything offensively. What makes you think that's going to change?
Yeah, I don't know if I mean Rodgers isn't totally healthy. He's playing behind an offensive line
It's getting
that
worse every game.
it's getting worse, and it's getting worse. Um, Devontae Adams, I actually think it's helped Garrett Wilson more. It's kind of like
Decoy.
freed him up because you've been, you actually have to contend with another wide receiver with a pulse. But it's not really fair to be like, and I also think it just goes back to they changed the offensive play caller, Hackett, and really the offensive coaching staff before was terrible. And now you have basically Aaron Rodgers calling the plays. All the delay of games that they got against the Patriots, it felt very much
I
like,
think a 41-year-old quarterback or something like that would know when to call a timeout. But I guess that was Matt LaFleur's job.
I guess so. But that's why I just feel like he's too much in the weeds. Like he's trying to change every single play, rather than just, it feels like there's a lack of trust, which not feels like, it seems like it's pretty obvious there's a lack of trust between all the pieces on the offense, right?
Thank you. Yes, I would agree. There doesn't seem to be like there is an inner circle. I
The
don't,
trust tree and the nest.
yeah, I don't like I have nipples. Can you milk me, Greg? Type
Yeah,
thing.
yes,
Yeah, I
yeah.
don't think that there's a lot of trust going on. And I think that's true. Okay, here's your last chance. Tell me why I shouldn't bet the Houston Texans that could still lose by a single point and cover the spread, or lose by two and
Uh,
push. What I don't see any reason to get off this Jets fade train.
no, I mean,
Even if the under
why?
train's dead, the Jets fade train is still choo
Why?
choo
Yes,
along.
it doesn't. There's no point. Why would you change? Why would we change now?
Okay.
It
We'll
doesn't.
move to Sunday night, which is our next of the headline games, which is kind of great because we get to pick a lot on Sunday and don't have to worry about any Germany games, at least for 2 weeks. We'll go to the Indianapolis Colts. Speaking of 5-point underdogs, speaking of on the road at the Minnesota Vikings, totals 46.5. And I know you have some thoughts on the left tackle for the Minnesota Vikings going down likely for the season.
Yeah, and we had some news on that front. I don't know if you saw.
Go ahead, break it for us.
The Vikings traded for Cam Robinson, the Jags offensive left tackle,
Mark.
who did not play on Sunday. part of me thinks like, there was some maneuvering happening and it's almost like a baseball kind of situation where it's like, hey, sit this one out, don't get hurt. We're going to trade you.
I mean,
Um,
injury did happen Thursday. That gives a little time to
well,
potentially make
time.
that happen. And maybe he's got the Devontae Adams hamstring injury that's going to all of a sudden miraculously disappear.
Exactly right. So, okay, Christian Darrisaw is the Vikings left tackle who I think tore part of his ACL and MCL, if I'm remembering correctly. So he's out for the year. Vikings make a trade for Cam Robinson, who has been a serviceable left tackle, I think, in four-ish, 5 seasons. Like a year and a half ago, he was my guy. He was one of my dudes, and really just hasn't really taken that next step to being like an elite left tackle. But he's good. Um, we kind of I don't know if we differed. It's just one of those our conversations where we're kind of just picking sides to argue when we were talking about this. And I kind of felt like the market was going to overreact um, to this left tackle news. And I mean, I don't feel like it did, like at all.
I don't think I ever try to rile anybody up. I'm simply me at all
Mhm.
times. There's nothing, especially don't even consider that on my social media accounts whatsoever. The umpires are truly how I feel about life in general, but
Yeah.
maybe trying to get some Yankee fans riled up as we speak. But yeah, Robinson, I guess it was a concussion, so maybe they are going to be extra careful. Bright lights on a day
Mhm.
game,
Fair
could be
enough.
a
Yeah,
bit more
yeah, yeah.
careful. But I just feel like the fantasy football player injuries get a lot more respect, even in a very efficient market like the NFL. I feel like it gets more than, though I guess, I mean, last year I feel like there were a lot of cluster O-line injuries that had a bunch of big moves late, and I was trying to like scrambling to figure this out. So I've made it a rule of my own to avoid bad quarterbacks, but also to follow offensive line injuries more. And I mean, we've seen Sam Darnold over his career see ghosts and not really play very well when he's pressured, but I think he's been great so far this season, and I don't think it's because he's had a clean pocket every pass attempt. The Colts defense was maligned for a lot of this year, and then all of a sudden they got on a win streak, and that's kind of gone out the window, but they've been underdogs against pretty bad teams, so I'm not sure that's out of the woods just yet. You could argue that the Minnesota home field advantage is better than most places, but still not that important. And I feel like the Colts, if they're not naming Anthony Richardson, they're like, he's starting. We haven't changed anything. It sounds like Joe Flacco.
It's pretty
Um,
Flacco.
do you think the number changes from a +5 right now and gets bet down? Do you think it stays the same? Do you think it's I feel like I don't know that a quarterback change would significantly change this number because we've seen some moves in the negative direction, like away from the Colts when Flacco was named a starter fairly recently. And
Yeah.
I didn't
I
agree
think we didn't
with
we get
that
weren't we getting a
result.
7 on this like just Monday?
So I will tell you, we
Or
had
look ahead at least?
So I'm now trying my best to grab all these numbers. Yes, I saw a 7 and 46. It looks like earliest line from last week. Never really saw another number, especially because the Vikings played Thursday. They
Yeah.
lost Thursday, so that does sometimes play a role here. Um,
Hmm.
Open 6.5 is what I saw. First number, not saying it's the open, but what I saw after they were taken down and then put back up. I bet online. If you're not a member of Bet Online, SportsBetting.ag, there are links in the podcast description, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on YouTube. But down from 7 to 6.5 to 6 to 5, pretty orderly, all in that same direction. While the total's up to 46.5, maybe as a Flacco thought process.
Yeah. I think certainly think it could be Flacco related for that. And I agree with it because when Richardson tapped his helmet and walked out, I was like, oh yes, here we go. This
I
is
figured they were just shouting in the microphone in there just so that he couldn't hear anymore, and then he had to come to the sideline to figure out what was broken in his helmet. And they're like,
I
"Oh
could not
no,
believe
sorry,
it.
we want
I
number
could not
five
believe
out there. He's elite." Okay, so are you part of me? I'm getting the little like the tinglings that the Vikings are going to come back to earth really fast. Are you getting those too, or are you steadfast and they're beating Joe Flacco and his elite nature?
I mean, I think they're a good. I still think they're a good team. I think it was a terrible spot. Having to go across the country, especially after playing the Lions, like that was obviously a big showdown for the division. Um, and then 3 days later, you're facing the Rams with actually their wide receivers that are healthy. And when the again healthy wide receivers, look how different that team was. Um,
Indeed.
so I think it was a pretty bad spot. But I also think that there we made there might be some meat on the bone like here, even at 5. Um, if we were getting to Vikings 3, that would probably be like my spot to be like, okay, we've gone too far.
We've gone too far. There's no coming back from this. All right, we'll move to Monday night, then we'll come back. Schnicker will draft two and snake draft order. I'll draft one of games to discuss on Sunday. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a 9.5 point underdog with all the juice right now. So maybe this falls to the key number of 9, tongue in cheek. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I guess you could be watching or listening on YouTube too, if you have it in the background or you're driving your kids to school. Perfect on the way to the library or something like that for the kids to start listening to sports betting stuff. The Chiefs 9.5 point favorites, as I just said, total is 46 on Monday Night Football.
Um, what did you learn from the Bucks with a depleted?
What I learned for the Bucks is they're going to run a lot of screens, and
Yes, and Kate Otten is the
the
new
Bucky
target.
Irving strategy to pick up as a really dynamic running back, he might just get all the carries and they just throw every pass to Rashad White in
Hmm.
the flats. I do feel like Spags is going to have a plan for that. He seems to be pretty capable, maybe not so much as a head coach, though I think he's still gunning for a top position at some point and will deserve it when the Chiefs win their third Super Bowl by another comeback victory. But I gotta say that does seem to be a way to keep the Bucks alive in this game is moving the chains, short passes, and trying to, I guess, run away from or pass away from a really dominant defense. I'm not sure I've seen the Chiefs this type of favorite. They never cover any numbers, it feels like, even against the Raiders this past weekend.
Uh,
Bucks are not good defensively. I think we're at that point now where it's like I still don't maybe the other than the Raiders winning at the Ravens, maybe the Bucks winning at the Lions might be one of the biggest surprises of this year. And I don't know necessarily that the Chiefs are in the same league right now as the Lions. I got to say, as weird as it is, that just came out of my mouth. Like in the playoffs, we'll see. In the Super Bowl, it would be. We'll see. But I feel like the Bucks. This is a big number, and it's gonna climb literally until kickoff,
yeah,
like on Monday night. So, in terms of since we're doing this tracking thing, I might as well since I spent so much time wasted doing this. 9.5 is the number we saw look ahead line last weekend. 45 down to 44.5. Now, I opened 8.5 or reopened 9.5, and we've been climbing from 44.5 all the way to 46. So they're expecting some more offense than we've been seeing in any of these Chiefs games.
yeah, and I think I was looking at. I think the Chiefs like odds makers have been pretty spot on with them this year. I think they're like 3-3, 4-3, 3-4 somewhere.
If there's ever a team to be right about, it is the team that's won multiple Super Bowls, has Taylor's boyfriend on their
Yep.
roster, and I mean, my mom like has always been a Patriots fan. She asked me where the what the channel the Chiefs are on the other day. I was like, "Who are you?"
What's going on?
It's especially weird because I was wearing a Chiefs shirt because I worn one when I went to the game with our guy Derek and Crosby, and I just, oh my God. Anyway, go ahead.
Anyways, I I mean the Chiefs again. We've pretty much established they're a defense first team now. You know,
They are 5-2
I do
against the
think
spread, actually 7-0.
5-2. Are they really 5-2? Dang.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that means the odds makers, the marketplace, not doing very
Not
well.
doing so well. I was
Losses
off.
losses against the spread. The Raiders this past weekend and the
Yeah.
Bengals, which they barely won. Covered 2.5 against Baltimore, 3 against Atlanta on the road, 6.5 by half at the Chargers, though that number probably was higher earlier. Covered the 5 against New Orleans in a blowout, and then we're somehow a 3 point underdog or 2.5 or something like that to the San Francisco 49ers. And
Yeah.
we're
For
gonna
some
continue
reason, I thought they didn't cover against the Chargers. That's where I was off.
early numbers. I don't think they did, but keep going.
Okay. Um, DeAndre Hopkins, I think is a pretty nice little pickup for them. I mean, he's probably the more consistent guy, possession type receiver, and then you can use Xavier Worthy in like a um
Stretch the field.
just stretch, just go, like kind of like what you wanted with Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice. So you've kind of created it again with just different pieces. And Travis Kelce finally got off the schneid, gets a touchdown. I love this defense. I don't. I mean, it's kind of not fair at this point. But I don't like the Bucks defense is not the normal Todd Bowles defense. It's not as good. I don't know how often they can keep getting Kate Otten involved and win games or even stay close. I know they didn't even cover on Sunday, unfortunately for us.
Indeed.
So
But
yeah,
they would cover if they lost by 6 in this one.
that's true.
And
I'm really disappointed that what happened to them health wise because I was interested to see where they would go this year. But like losing Evans and Godwin is when they were both having close to career years is really unfortunate.
what I think it might do though is we get a Mike Evans back if he ever does get to full health.
Yeah.
Then we might have some value on the Bucks coming down the stretch because they
Yeah.
potentially go through a tough part of their schedule, take a couple losses, and then eventually bounce back in a horrible division. But I guess they've already played the Falcons twice. All right, so that I'm still interested in the Bucks. I feel like it's kind of an undervalued offense, though, against a really good defense, which does make me concerned that 9.5, and like, because in that situation, you're not hoping for the Bucks to win. You just want them to hang around. And I've just found that those betting on teams that you're hoping just to lose by a certain amount is a really tough
Mhm.
way to make money in
Mhm.
sports betting. So we've made it to the three for all, I guess, on this episode where you get to choose which game you want to talk about from our Sunday slate, since we already did Thursday night, Sunday night, and Monday night.
Okay, there's several good
A
options
lot
here.
of good choices here, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry to put you on the spot, but that's
Okay, now let's start with Green Bay. Let's go Lions, a 3.5 point favorite on the road against Green Bay.
Yeah, and a lot of juice in the Packers, potentially falling down to three. Total is 48.5 in this one. It seems like it's Malik Willis. And I mean, hard to argue with his record so far for the Green Bay Packers, though it did come against some pretty weak opponents, you could argue. And I don't know if your wife is making you laugh in the background or if I said something more funny than I thought, but
No, I mean it was just funny because they Malik Willis. I was trying to remember who he beat. I think it was the Titans.
was the Titans because they were a 3 point underdog. Go figure on that one. I think they were also underdogs to the Vikings, if I'm not, or was it the Vikings that was underdogs to the Packers? I might have messed that one up mentally, but I think Malik Willis, there we are, is undefeated. I think so far this
Yeah, he
season.
is. He is.
But the Lions, I mean, I don't know that I want to get in front of the Lions truck. Like it's not even a small vehicle anymore that's run me over when I've bet against them so far. I was going to against the Bucks that one fateful day and said I chose over because I thought the Bucks weren't going to hang around, we're going to hang around, but it wouldn't be enough to cover. That those I hate more than anything. But Lions destroyed my Cowboys play, thinking they didn't deserve to be 3.5 point favorite in Big D. But Little D or the other D or just the D seemed to give its D all over the Dallas Cowboys. And then I thought a very good game with the Vikings 10-0 lead. It was a pretty nice start. Still was close to the end thanks to a lot of mistakes, I think, by the Lions. But I think I've tried to take my shot at the king and I've missed. And I
Yeah.
think I've reached that point because I don't think Lambeau's that scary to go into anymore. Backup quarterback certainly could hang and be in this game, but um, I think in this world, I don't want to be against favorites that have a good chance of blowing teams out. And I think that's what the Lions are built to do. They like literally are running trick plays in the first quarter because they know that they're going to kill everybody. And it's just it's not my favorite to be on the other side of that.
Did you know the Lions scored 52 points and they had like 90 passing yards on Sunday?
I picked up Jared Goff instead of good old Dak Dakota Prescott as my quarterback in the Sigma Chi Old Balls League. So yes, I did know there's a very low yardage total, and I have no idea what to do with my quarterback position in that league, nor any positions in any league for any of my teams at this point.
Okay, well, I was laughing because we are talking about Malik Willis and how, yes, like the game plans, it was great. And it wasn't that the offense did well in the two games he played. And then I looked back and remembered, yes, you're right. It was the Titans and the Indianapolis Colts that Malik
That's
Willis beat. So after getting more of a sample size with those two squads, I don't know if we should be that impressed overall. Like I know Malik Willis has looked better than any of the times that he played for Tennessee. Totally get it. Just little concern that we may be overestimating where the expectations may be a little too far. And while like it's hard to argue with if you look at the metrics for Detroit and that 52 point blowout. Um, yeah, the yards weren't there, everything wasn't there, but like it's hard to ignore just like this team just clicking. Kind of what you mentioned. It's hard to ignore um, how dominant they've been in all facets, and sometimes that's even past like the stats that we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a road favorite player. I've been working my
No,
way into that so far this season. And it's gone okay, but usually that involves the JETS, 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 Jets. I think I'm gonna sit on the sideline. The days of betting the Detroit Lions as an underdog, I feel like are gone. They're favorites every week, no matter where they play.
yeah,
I feel like I don't know. I mean, they're probably an underdog to the Chiefs right now, but not by much, I don't think. And I almost want to say they might be around Pick'em at Arrowhead. Like, I,
no,
I
I
mean,
would make them like one and a half.
I mean, okay, that if it's below 3 points,
And
that's
that's
close to
actually with
Pick'em.
Aiden Hutchinson too. I
I
don't
mean,
know, man.
I think it's
You
probably
need to look at
closer to 3 than to Pick'em, but like
yeah.
below 3 at Arrowhead is significant, especially considering how deep we are into the season. Okay, for my biggest interest for us to Scott, unless go ahead, finish your
No,
thought.
no, I was just gonna say, I mean, they opened the season in 2023 at Arrowhead, and they were what, 7.5 point underdogs? So that would be a pretty massive adjustment that we've made in just a year and a
You're
half.
talking about you're talking about the line. I
Yeah, with
mean,
the Lions and Chiefs.
so we
They,
saw the, but I'm just talking this season. I know you realize that, but
yeah,
close to
yeah,
2.5 to the Ravens at home, like
yeah,
that. I think it's a good chance they're right there or closer to pick them. I gotta say,
yeah, I
so
agree.
still close to pick them. I can't do this because I have to do this. I can't believe I'm doing this, but the Atlanta Falcons are 2.5 point favorites to Dallas Cowboys. Total is 52. I just like. The Cowboys, I mean, is it that they're just good in garbage time? Dakota Prescott is just not, he's not Dak anymore. He doesn't run. And like Casey Pate wants me to start a t-shirt business that just sells Pick Scott t-shirts. I don't know even if that's even a popular thing, if it's just in his mind, but
I
uh,
didn't know that was such a thing. Yeah, I think that was Casey.
he sure it is, but I don't know.
Okay.
Um, I feel like the Falcons, I've lost on or against them the last 3 weeks. If I'm counting, it could be longer, but I'll look that up while you talk about this game because I want to hear your thoughts on the Cowboys plus 2.5 totals 52.
Okay, so the Cowboys offense might actually have some success. Pick Scott or Dakota Pick Scott, if that's what we want to call him, might be able to throw the ball around a little bit. Um, because pretty much every quarterback has had success against the Falcons secondary, even though they've got some big names back there. Um, yeah, like to me, the Cowboys are one of they've beaten up on three really bad teams, and then every time they've faced someone with a pulse or better, they've just been crushed. Uh, I was texting, I was getting a little nervous Sunday night
Yes.
as again, we were talking, we talked on this podcast. I was like, I feel like I'm going to be back on the 49ers again. It's the exact same number from last year. And this Cowboys team is way worse. And the coaching staff is still, well, frankly, terrible compared to the 49ers often
Nice
or
hit, routine, especially considering all the 49ers injuries. Took a lot to go in there and do it, but I'm glad you did.
um and yeah, it was a good setup for the Cowboys because it was off a bye. Um I'm not a believer in the Falcons. Like
Same,
their
same.
schedule's really, yeah, I didn't get there with you. Did I get there against Seattle?
So
Obviously last week.
I think that was like right up into the gun, but yeah, took the Falcons against Seattle. They couldn't block anything. Had some, I think their forever injured right tackle was a problem. But
Yes.
I mean, I was very into the Carolina Panthers before we realized that they're just no longer a football team. And that was pretty wild. So yeah, 3 straight L's against the spread for me. Two
We
backing
need to
opponents, once backing the Falcons. And I'm just tempted to think that they're not very good and have been very fortunate playing a schedule that has involved a lot of the NFC South, who are also bad. A Chiefs game, which they were in, but felt like they should have done better to close out and weren't able to, which is a reason why I like betting against favorites that can't close victories. The ridiculous Philadelphia come from behind little survivor killer for me in week two. And then week one against Pittsburgh, they were just like, did nothing, it felt like, for the entire matchup. The problem is the Cowboys basically had a huge come from behind, put your against the spread number in danger after being way behind. Same story against Detroit, but weren't able to do that. We're dominant potentially in the yardage categories at Pittsburgh and made a quarterback change after they stole a win on 4th and goal late, which we weren't covering until they scored a touchdown last play of the game, essentially. At the Giants, like, honestly, could have lost that game a million ways. Could have also probably covered the spread too. Played a really got blasted by the Ravens, came back to make that close. Got blasted by New Orleans, got a big win at Cleveland, who then looked like the worst team. I mean, I don't know really what to make of it, which probably means stay away from this, but 2.5 feels pretty respectful for a Dallas Cowboys team that all of a sudden can't play at home, but can play on the road.
Yeah.
At least
Yeah.
we're very close to covering away from home right there, covered at Pittsburgh, base pushed whatever the final number was at the Giants. Um, I was hoping for you to tell me to stay far, far away from this game because I clearly don't know what I'm talking about with the Falcons, and I guess not the Cowboys either.
Well, I don't think the coaching, there won't be a big of a coaching edge. That's, I usually base my Cowboys picks on, okay, is the coach that McCarthy's matching up with just about to blow him away? And that will not be the case. So I don't know. We may have to talk about this later this week. We'll see.
All
A
right.
three, like I think there was a three. I think we missed our shot.
It might come back. I mean, just look at how bad they've been.
Yeah.
Unless the power that there was a three out there. It was two look ahead lines and it's a total of 48.5, now up to 52. So clearly the over money has hit.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, Dallas is definitely the more popular team. If that's gonna outweigh the vaunted NFL betting market, then I guess so be it.
I think
I'm interested in the Cowboys, but I'll skip. Go ahead, pick your game.
there's one of the where everyone was kind of expecting Deron Bland to return for in the secondary for the Cowboys. He's been expected to be back like for the Lions game, and then they had to buy, and they thought he was going to be back this week. So I mean,
That's
I think he does make a difference.
bad
He's
sign.
he's a bona fide starter for them that has been missing for most of this year.
Lingering injuries, they don't stop lingering, I don't think. And they're
Yeah,
huge re-injury risk too, as well, even though I did
sure.
back Jaden Daniels last week. Okay, last game that we talked
Last
about, what
game.
would you like to discuss?
Okay, let's another division showdown. Let's go Rams at Seattle, which is now an interesting NFC West battle, potentially for teams that are vying for playoffs or for the division crown.
Yeah, we've been talking about the NFC West for a lot this season. I definitely had texted you about this number in the look ahead number, and I was surprised seeing that the Rams were only a 3-point underdog. Not really, definitely not recognizing that Puka Nacua would be back. Probably wasn't expecting Cooper Kupp either, but then they both surprise return on Thursday. I think one more surprising than the other in the Nacua direction. But we've seen this one fall from 3 with total of 48 all the way down to and that was the Rams +3 at Seattle.
Yeah.
Now 1 point favorite with all the juice, climbing to 1.5 probably before this podcast ends. Total's about the same, 48.5. The Rams are, I mean, they're a way different team with their with their receivers. And I mean, a defense that looked horrible at times this year has seemingly improved. Maybe that's a result of not being out in the field much. But if you go back, the Rams basically sold their souls, sold their future to try to win a Super Bowl. It worked. And they are basically paying the piper for that a few years ago with a lot of depleted talent. The nice part is they get a Seattle team who they know well. I think there's a coaching advantage for anybody with Sean McVay. McVay, as my friend calls him, McVay. It's probably how I should call him. And it does tell that this line's moved a significant amount. Injuries certainly and returns from injury explain that. But the Seahawks never really felt like I was that impressed by them, though I'd backed them a couple times earlier in the season. Getting blown out at home by the Bills doesn't really do too much because I think the Bills are good.
Yeah.
But man, I don't think I want much to do with the Seahawks until they show me and prove something to me, especially without DK Metcalf.
Yeah, the challenge with I was interested in this one because we had talked about the number. I felt good about Rams -3 or +3 rather, and I know we've only swung through the zero, but like it's getting a little weird. it's getting a little bit too ridiculous for me.
I don't think
And
it's
I
coming
know
back
like
down. I don't
they,
think Seattle money's gonna eat this up and make them a favorite.
no, it's going to keep going. But like, and I get it. We just saw two of the, the results couldn't have been worse for Seattle and better for the Rams. Um, so this is going to be an injury game too. We got to watch the injury report for the Seahawks. They've got a lot of offensive line injuries. Defensive line still hasn't been healthy. So if some of those guys are back, then I'm kind of interested in Seattle because this number I think is just going to keep going. We may be able to get. You think we get +3? I doubt it, but maybe there's a lot of
Probably
momentum.
not. Probably, I think it's too far to move, but I think it does go in that direction. We probably see it too, at least. So
Yeah.
that'll do it for this episode. We've covered 6 games. We're gonna give you best bets right now. But before we do that, if you could give us some love on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, leave a 5-star review. It's huge for the search rankings. Follow at the real underscore G Warner on Instagram and on YouTube if you want these 1 minute videos, the shorts and the reels. I'll do a little bit better job of getting them out instead of Monday this week, like I did last week. Unfortunately, it was my birthday, so I couldn't really. I had a few things going on and entertaining and all that sort of stuff. At underscore Snicker, where do you want to go for your best bet on this week 9 episode?
I have a best bet, but I also have a two for bet. And this is inspired by my good friend Griffin, who just
Oh,
had his 47th birthday on
ooh, yeah.
Sunday.
Thank you.
Um, let's go. We're gonna go first half under on Sunday Night Football. Under 23 with the Colts and Vikings. I also am good with the under 46 and a half full game on that. I do like the Minnesota crowd. I think it's one of the better ones in the NFL. I love Joe Flacco, but I think this is maybe a little bit of an overreaction. I think the Vikings defense with a week and a half to prepare, going to be much better than what we saw against the Rams. Um, and even we've talked about this left tackle issue with the Vikings. I still think there's going to be some issues there as well. So let's go under on both the first half. That is my best bet, Griffin. Under first half, but I also like the full game.
Understood.
23.
Understood. Under 23. Hey, this is a real underscore G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. You might have just heard our 40-minute episode with that A underscore Snicker, the NFL edition, where we go through the 6-pack of best games, biggest games on the NFL card and give you some best bets. Well, it's time for that. We're 10-6 this year, 63%. We're 22-12, our last 34, 65%. So we're basically just hitting the same type of stride we were in the playoffs last year, which I think we could say dominant. You just heard at A underscore Snicker. He's going under 23 in Sunday Night Football. The Indianapolis Colts visiting Minnesota Vikings. Hopefully, we get some Anthony Richardson, but I think he's expecting Joe Flacco to start this game, as am I. And I'm going to go something that I don't do very often, but I'm sticking with a Thursday Night Football winner, and that is the Houston Texans, a 2-point underdog on the road at the Jets. I'm just not getting off the Jets, fade the Jets bandwagon, choo choo on the train. I'm not getting off it. So take the Vikings, Colts under 23 and the Texans +2 for 2 more winners from MLB. That's not MLB. Anyway, I'm going to edit that part out, but it was good joining you. See you all soon and have a great evening. We'll catch you next week.